All right, what's up, everybody? It's Dr. Jeff down here at Rythmia Life Advancement Center. We're going to talk about curing trauma. So, most of our guests, I think most people in the world have some level of trauma. And what I really like about plant medicine is that it's very effective at resolving and curing trauma. So, I want to give you like a little overview a bit about how to work through trauma and what that means and what it's about, right? So trauma is something that, we might be experiencing currently, or for a lot of us, we had childhood trauma, or we had, relationship trauma. And, the thing that's like problematic about trauma is that the emotions that occur during the trauma are often stored in a part of our brain where we need to push those difficult emotions out of the way so that we can survive the trauma. So if I'm in a fight or flight mode, if I'm being abused by my parents or a caregiver, or if I witness a horrific accident, or if I'm a soldier and I'm in war, my emotions get in the way, because I need to survive. So if I'm scared, or if I'm hurt, or if I'm unsure about what's going on, that's going to get in the way of my survival. So what happens during trauma is that we click into a fight or flight mode. So all of my emotions that are like really difficult, they're going to impede me from surviving, get pushed away into what's called the part of the brain called the amygdala. And then I'm just super focused, and I can get through it. I can detach, I can dissociate, I can go numb, I can just survive and have my instincts kick in, right? So trauma is sometimes if you've ever seen a car accident, or you've been in some sort of horrific event, everything seems kind of in slow motion, and there's not really, it's almost like a dream state. And it's kind of like this weird space that you're in, and you just kind of get through it, right? So it would be awesome, and I would love it if the emotions associated with those events just kind of weren't present at all, and they just were gone forever. The problem is they're not. The problem is they get shoved into a part of our brain for us to deal with later, or in an evolutionary sort of way, they get shoved into a part of our brain that helps us stay safe in the future. It helps us focus when there's something similar that happens. So trauma is a really, really tough one, right? It's a tough one to work on. So let's just say I was being assaulted as a kid, or I was in a dangerous environment as a kid, or I was in an abandoning environment as a kid for my whole childhood and teenage years. Well, what that means is that I'm a survivor. I can kick much butt and get through a lot of stuff and handle a lot of situations. But the problem is all those emotions that I should have felt at the time that were not appropriate for me to feel because they would have hindered my survival, all those emotions get pushed off to the side and they build up. In a lifetime of doing this, right, it just builds up. So what happens is eventually I'm an adult. I'm not in a hostile environment. I'm not in a place where I need to fight or flee, right? And I'm not in a place where I'm being abused. Now I'm an adult and I have authority over my environment, and things are okay. But what happens is when there's a hint of something that is from my past, like somebody's not truthful, or somebody's abandoning, or I don't really feel comfortable, what happens is those emotions from my past surface, right? And they help me unplug and go into a survival mode. But as an adult, I don't need to do that anymore because I'm not under attack, and I have autonomy, and I can have free will, right? So what happens is a lot of people with trauma suffer from a certain amount of situations. One of those things is relationships. They don't trust people, or they don't trust themselves, or they can't really connect with people, or they don't trust any sort of authority. That's not so bad, right? But there's like a certain set of circumstances that sort of surface anytime we feel a similar theme of what happened when we were kids. Or it could be in the recent past. It doesn't have to be when we're only kids. But in the kid age, the developmental years 0 to 12, that's where it's like kind of like gets solidified more. Okay, so what happens with trauma then is that if I have all these emotions stocked up that I've never really looked at, I've never really felt, I've never really like resolved or understood, and I'm seeing that it's affecting my current life. I'm maybe jumping from job to job. I can't find a stable relationship. I'm picking the wrong sort of partners. I don't feel confident. I have anxiety. I have depression. I might have a substance abuse issue. It's all these things, right? And I say, well, what's wrong with me, right? Like, what's going on with me? Like, why? Like, my life seems sort of okay. You know, I can work. I'm smart. I can get along with people enough, right? So, like, what's going on? Well, likely there's a history of emotional trauma, and that baggage is influencing the way you feel and the way you make decisions and the way you deal with your life currently. So you have a couple different options. One option is you can self-medicate. You can go drink every night. You can take pills. You can do drugs. You can avoid these emotions. You can do that forever. It doesn't work. It's not healthy. It's not a good way to do it. It leads to addiction, leads to health concerns, all kinds of problems. That's one way. The other way is you can go to therapy, and you can talk to a psychologist or a psychiatrist. And those people often don't know what the fuck they're doing. Okay, so sorry, but that's just the reality. And a lot of them are good, and a lot of them do know, but a lot of them don't know. And what they're trying to do is trying to help you feel better. So they're good people. They're trying to help you feel better, but they don't understand how to help you feel safe and how to resolve this trauma. So what happens then is that you're in therapy, in and out for years and years. You go to therapy, you talk to a therapist, and you say, "Oh yeah, well this happened and that happened," and there's all these sort of like intellectualization of the events of the past, but there's no emotional component that surfaces. You can understand, yeah, well, you had a rough childhood, you grew up in a rough area, you had difficult relationships, you had all kinds of stuff that was tough. Okay, cool. Intellectually, you get it, but what about those emotions, right? The emotions are what matter. The intellectualization of the events of the past are not really that significant. You know, I had a lot of people, you know, each week check in here, and I've got a lot of guests that I talked to even today, they're here at Rythmia, that said, you know, there's something that's eating at me, and I'm not sure what it is. I said, well, don't worry about what it is. You don't even need to know. But what you do need to do is you need to let those emotions of those years of your childhood or recent past, you need to let those emotions surface up and let them pass through you and flow out, because they're hindering you. Now, I give an example of, like, let's say you're at an intersection you're on the street. You're at an intersection with there's green light, red light, and you see a car accident. There's like about 20 other people around you. It's a really brutal, you know, hardcore car accident. What happens when the police get there is they ask all the people, like, what happened? You're going to get 20 different stories and 20 different versions about what happened. That car ran the red light. That car ran the red light. There's green, this, that. I don't know, you know, this car came that way, whatever, right? You're going to get 20 different versions. But what you're going to get is a consistent emotional experience, which is, I'm scared. I was worried about those people in the car, and I'm concerned about their health, and I don't know what to do, and I feel scared. That is the reality of trauma. Okay, it's the emotional side. So what happens then, if you're going to deal with emotions, right, and you're going to deal with trauma in the past, you got to look at like what's going on for you emotionally. And usually when people have trauma, it's fear, it's pain, it's regret, it's guilt sometimes, right? It's not your fault, but you have this guilt thing. It's all these emotions that are super confusing. And if I'm 49, right? So if I was 5 years old, I had all this trauma happen, then it surfaces in therapy, or it surfaces in plant medicine, or it surfaces in some meditation I do, or my exercise. If it surfaces, it's very confusing, because it's like, why do I feel angry right now? Why do I feel scared right now? Why do I feel guilty right now? There's nothing going on around me that makes me feel that way. So why am I feeling that way? So I start to think about it. So I think, oh, well, I must be a bad person, or I must be making bad decisions, or somebody's abusing me, even though I don't know who that is. And there's just, life sucks, and things are on top of me and impeding me and hindering me, and like I'm just being oppressed, right? So you start to intellectualize these emotions that come up from the past. So the key to processing trauma and curing trauma is to not intellectualize the emotions of the past. You may understand them, you may understand them, and God bless you if you do, and that's cool. But most people are not going to understand the emotions that are surfacing. What I tell guests that come here to Rythmia to work on trauma, which is like pretty much everybody, I tell them, don't worry about trying to figure out what it all means. Just let it surface and feel it and sit with it. And if you're sitting with some guilt, sit with it and don't try to trip out on it and figure out what it means. If you're feeling some sadness, feel it. If you're feeling some anger, feel it. Be angry, be pissed off. If you're feeling all kinds of stuff that you're not, it's not relevant to what's going on in your day. That's the key. Sit with the emotion. Do not push it away. Sit with it. And I have good news for people. If you sit with the emotion and you don't fight it, it will pass very quickly. I've seen it every week. I've seen it for 25 years with people I've worked with when they're doing it the right way. I've seen it for almost 3 years here at Rythmia. If you sit with the emotion, it comes and goes really quick because you're a survivor. You're somebody that wants to thrive and wants to be successful and happy and grounded. So these emotions of the past, they don't serve you right now. So there's no need for you to hold on to a bunch of irrelevant trauma from the past that is not relevant for today. So what you got to do is just feel it. When you feel it, that's how you process it. Everybody always talks about, like in psychiatry, right? You have to process trauma. Like, what does that mean? Well, this is what it means. You have to feel it. You got to feel it. It's not fun. It's not easy. There's work involved. You have to be in a safe environment. That's what Rythmia is about. We're a safe environment to do this work. I work with the guests, all the holistic therapy staff, all the shamans, all the people we have here are here to help you sit in a place that you can process this trauma and these emotions that are hard. So you got to feel it. You got to sit with it. It doesn't last long. Good news. It doesn't last long. 20 years of abuse only lasts a few hours, believe it or not, if you're doing it the right way, if you're actually sitting into it and absorbing the process and letting it come through you. That's the good news. Now, your ego wants to protect yourself from feeling these emotions, so it tries to block them and keep them in the amygdala, keep them blocked from your day-to-day because you're an evolutionary person. You're trying to survive and thrive, and these emotions are scary. They might make you vulnerable. So what you have to do is you have to let the ego go, feel what's going on, feel the process, let it surface, and let it come through you. That's how you process trauma. It's a very important part of what we're doing here. Now, the part that I said about therapy, right, is you can work with a therapist, you can do this, or work with somebody, a trainer in a gym can help you with this, right? Okay, but it takes a really long time. It takes a really long time. It's not like something you can do in like 1 hour. So what I love about Rythmia is that we do it in 1 week. So think about what's going on, right? Okay, you can go to 10 years of therapy, 20 years of therapy. You can go to years of all these like counselings and all these different, you can read 1 million books. You can do all this kind of stuff. And you're still sort of like, I'm not really totally comfortable. I have some awareness. It's not bad, right? It's helpful, but it just takes a long time. It's really expensive, right? It's just like, let's drag out the process. Well, what I'd rather see you do is come to Rythmia, knock it out in a week, be in a safe environment, be with people that understand what you're going through and have seen it thousands of times. Okay, I've seen this work thousands of times. So I'm capable of helping you become grounded and work through this situation, okay? So trauma is hard, but it's not as hard as you think it is. And there's a lot of, when I think of trauma, I like to use the example of soldiers, right? Like for PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, right? Soldiers, let's just say, we can all agree they have a lot of them have some pretty hardcore trauma. The PTS organization of soldiers is really looking at lately plant medicine as a way to help the soldiers overcome trauma and prevent suicide and prevent long-term depression and prevent substance abuse. So if this is good for soldiers who have been in war, right? I think it's good for you that have been in your own war. You've been in your own war as a kid. Make no mistake about it. Growing up in an abusive environment is war. It's emotional warfare. And you need to process this stuff that happened 40 years ago or however long ago it was, right? And do it in a way that's safe with us. Do it in a way that's contained in a space that can help you get clarity. You're going to feel like $1,000,000. You know, you feel like you took a backpack off of you full of rocks. And you're just lighter and you feel great. And then what happens is you go home and you're like, wow, I have a lot of clarity, but I'm very sensitive now because I have this burden's off of me. And that's a whole nother subject we'll talk about another Facebook Live, like how to do that at home, which is get there. But the bottom line is, do not let the history emotionally of your upbringing or of the current situation you're going through right now that's emotionally traumatic, do not let it influence how you feel about yourself and how you make decisions, and don't let it affect your relationships, and don't let it damage more of your life and continue the cycle that's been going on for a really long time. Get it resolved. Just come down here and get it resolved. It's not as bad as you think it's going to be. People are scared, and it makes sense, and I get it. But I'm telling you, it's not as bad as you think it's going to be. It's going to be really quick. And that's the beauty of plant medicine. That's the beauty of Rythmia. Can't wait to meet you. See you guys soon. Pura Vida from Costa Rica. Give us a call right there. That's the number. Look forward to meeting you. Pura Vida.